So I'm just going to give you a few tips how to start drawing another object. The last object I showed you was quite flat, and so that was quite fairly straightforward. And as I said, the temptation is with flat things to draw around them, but you can't really with something like a mug. Okay, so we're going to try and draw this. I put it at an angle, so hopefully you can see the angle of this. Okay. Now, one of the key things when you are drawing from observation is drawing what you see rather than drawing what you know. An exaggerated example of this is little kids. Well, if I set a small child to draw this, they would look at it for like 1 second and then they would draw what they know, because they know what a mug looks like. So they wouldn't think that they had to study it very carefully. So you would end up with this kind of drawing. So everybody knows that the top of a mug is round. So a small child would probably draw the top of the mug as round. Okay, now they might think about doing the sides. This mug gets thinner as it goes down. But what you also know is that this mug is on a table. A table is flat, so the bottom has to be flat. And then they might try, okay? So that would be an example of somebody drawing a mug from what they know rather than what they can see. Now, when you're drawing from observation, it's important to look at something very carefully, because sometimes things surprise you. So I'm going to put this back in position, and what you'll notice, the top of the mug, if I was looking at a mug from above, it would look like that. But when you look at mugs, and particularly this one, or any kind of rounded object, the tops look like that, depending on the angle that you're looking at them. And that angle is called an ellipse. So if I move the mug to that kind of angle, the top edge, the ellipse, gets wider. Okay, if I go back, it gets thinner again. Okay, and that's the easiest way to draw one, and then you can just erase. Don't try and do this. It's a common mistake people make because you don't have pointy parts there. It's a gradual curve which you draw like that. Okay, so let me start my mug drawing. Again, as with the paintbrush, we're going to work out the width. So I'm just going to draw the width of my mug. I want it to be bigger than the actual mug. Okay, so I'm going to measure the width of my mug and see how that compares to the height. Now it's almost the same, which is quite surprising. Okay, you would expect that to be much taller. So again, I'm going to use that. I'm going to have my width. I'm going to measure it, and I'm going to put a mark here. Of course, what I should have done to begin with was do a line down the middle. Okay, so I am now going to make sure that my sides are equal. Yes, they are. And again, double check that I've done that far enough. Now I haven't, because it should be a little bit longer, so I'm going to come down to here. So again, as you can see, I've drawn quite lightly because I can erase easily. Temptation is when you start to get a little bit frustrated that you start to press even harder. Okay, so I'm just going to put my pencil down the side of that. I'm looking at the kind of angle I've got. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is create my box to put the mug in. I always imagine this, that think about when you're drawing these lines, if you had this object and you had to put it in a piece of packaging, how would you package it? How big would it be? Okay, so we've got that. Now it gets narrower, so I'm just going to see, and again it's difficult with the round, how wide the base is compared to the top. And I've got about that much, so I'd say about a third. It needs to be a third narrower. Okay, so if I measure that kind of distance, I'm going to take a third away. It should be something like that. I'm going to see, have I got the same kind of space? Yes, I have. And then what I can do is do a line that comes from there, and a line that comes from there down to the base. Okay. Now, what I now need to do is make the bottom look curved. Remember, we talked about doing an ellipse. So that's like half an ellipse. What you might want to do is to do, I quite like doing that because you get the feel of it being rounded, and then later you just erase the lines that you don't want. Okay, so the curve there should be the same as the curve at the top. So again, I'm doing that kind of shape, making sure I don't get sharp corners. I'm again getting rid of the lines I don't need. The width of the handle, I've propped it up, so the angle of this, how many handles could I fit in to the rest of the body? 1, 2, 3, 4.5. So I'm measuring about 25% for where my handle should go. And then I'm trying to work out where it should go bottom. Again, I could measure it, but this time I'm going to do a bit of a guess. And I can create a little box that the handle might fit in. And then from there, what I can start to do is do the angle of the handle. So what we're doing in this way, we're just drawing things one stage at a time, and then we're erasing what we don't need. So I hope that's enough to go on for now, and I hope that helps.